Reading from Srimad-Bhagavatam, 2nd Canto, 4th chapter, text 24. Okay, so Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Namas Tasmai Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Vedase Papur Jnanam Ayam Somya Yan Mukham Buruhasavam Namastasmai Bhagavate Vasudevaya Vedase Papuryanam Mayam Somya Yan Mukham Buruhasavam Namastasmai Bhagavate Vasudevaya Vedase Papuryanam Somya Yan Mukham Buruhasavam Namastasmai Bhagavate Vasudevaya Vedase Papuryanam Somya Yan Mukham Buruhasavam. Okay. Ladies.
Namastasmai Bhagavate Vasudevaya Vedase Papuryanam Somya Yan Mukham Buruhasavam. Namastasmai Bhagavate Vasudevaya Vedase Papuryanam Ayam Somya Yan Mukham Buruhasavam.
All right. All right. Oops. Namaha. My obeisances. Tasmai. Unto him. Bhagavate. Unto the personality of Godhead. Vasudevaya. Unto Vasudeva or his incarnations. Vedase, the compiler of the Vedic literatures. Papahu, drunk. Jnanam, knowledge. I am this Vedic knowledge. Somyaha, other devotees, especially the consorts of Lord Krishna. Yat, from whose? Mukha Amburuha, the lotus-like mouth. Asavam, nectar from his mouth. So translation, I offer my respectful obeisances unto Srila Vyasadeva, the incarnation of Vasudeva, who compiled the Vedic scriptures. The pure devotees drink up the nectarian transcendental knowledge dropping from the lotus-like mouth of the Lord. Okay, so purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. In pursuance of the specific utterance, Veda say, or the compiler of the system of transcendental knowledge, Srila Siddhara Swami has commented that the respectful obeisances are offered to Srila Vyasadeva, who is the incarnation of Vasudeva. Srila Jiva Goswami has agreed to this, but Srila Vishwanatha Chakravarti Thakur has made a further advance, namely that the nectar from the mouth of Lord Krishna is transferred to his different consorts, and thus they learn the finer arts of music, dance, dressing, decorations, and all such things which are relished by the Lord. Such music, dance, and decorations enjoyed by the Lord are certainly not anything mundane, because the Lord is addressed in the very beginning as para, or transcendental. This transcendental knowledge is unknown to the forgotten conditioned souls. Srila Vyasadeva, who is the incarnation of the Lord, thus compiled the Vedic literatures to revive the lost memory of the conditioned souls about their eternal relation with the Lord. One should therefore try to understand the Vedic scriptures, or the nectar transferred by the Lord to his consorts in the conjugal humor from the lotus-like mouth of Vyasadeva or Shukadeva. By gradual development of transcendental knowledge, one can rise to the stage of the transcendental arts of music and dance displayed by the Lord in his Rasa Leela. But without having the Vedic knowledge, one can hardly understand the transcendental nature of the Lord's rasa dance and music. The pure devotees of the Lord, however, can equally relish the nectar in the form of the profound philosophical discourses and in the form of the kissing by the Lord in the rasa dance, as there is no mundane distinction between the two. So, right, so, Namastasmai Bhagavate Vasudevaya Vedase Papur Gyanam Ayam Somya Yan Mukham Buru Hasavam. So, Om Gana Timrandasha Gananjana Shalakya Chakshur Unmeditam Gena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. So it's also very interesting here that when you have the purports or the repeating the commentary of Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, you get into these very, very esoteric, let's say, rasa theology or dealings of the gopis with Krishna. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur has that as his specialty. Of course, this is probably beyond most of us, as far as our realization is concerned, about having Krishna kissing the gopis and transferring the nectar, and then somehow the nectar gets transferred through Shukadeva Goswami. Of course, Shukadeva Goswami, ontologically, is the parrot of Srimati Radharani. The general explanation given is that he's called Shukadeva because he makes the Vedic literature sweeter. Shuka means like parrot. And when a parrot pecks on a piece of fruit, it softens the fruit and allows the fruit to oxidize at that particular point. Oxidize means it's exposed to the air. And therefore it ripens quicker, it gets very sweet. And to take fruit that's not ripened, I mean, if any of you have eaten like a banana or a mango that's not ripened, it's not so nice. Unless you're going to make mango pickles, which is a different thing. But if you're going to take the mango in its fully ripe state, not overripe, but fully ripe stage, it's delicious. It's like drinking nectar. I remember there was one devotee in South America who forbade the devotees from eating mangoes. He said it's breaking the regulated principles. He says, like, I mean, he was a real fanatic devotee. Of course, he later fell down from devotional service because he was so much absorbed in the negation of the material energy rather than the positive aspects of Krishna consciousness. He said it's like having sex with your mouth to eat a mango. But it's not really like that. So anyway, so the mango needs to be fully ripe in order to be enjoyed. And so Shukadeva Goswami is described as a shuka, or parrot, because he ripens or presents the Vedic literatures in such a sweet way. And of course, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur does that too, and all these great devotees do that. But another reason Shukadeva Goswami is called Shuka or Shukadev is because he's the parrot of Srimati Radharani. And we hear in Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur's writings and also the writings of Srila Rupa Goswami about the interactions between the parrot, the Shuka and Shuki, I guess the parrot of Srimati Radharani and the parrot of Krishna, because they both have parrots. And Srimati Radharani actually has quite a few different pets, and Krishna has different pets too. You know, Krishna has a pet peacock, and I forget all the names of the different pets of Srimati Radharani, but one of the pets is a parrot, and the parrot repeats the pastimes, or repeats the words of Srimati Radharani and Sri Krishna. So there's the story told by Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur about Shukadeva Goswami's birth, which is quite interesting. And so he said, when Krishna left the planet, the parrot of Srimati Radharani, that Shuka, the parrot, became very upset, and in order to maintain contact with Krishna, the parrot wanted to hear Srimad-Bhagavatam, because the Srimad-Bhagavatam is the literary incarnation of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and Krishna is present in every word, every syllable of the Srimad-Bhagavatam. So, and also the statement is, the sages asked the question, you know, by what are religious principles protected now that Krishna has gone to his own abode? Krishna Swadama Upagate Dharma Gyana Divisaha. And the answer is Purnako Dhanodataha, that this Bhagavad Purana is the manifestation of Krishna now that Krishna has gone to the spiritual world. Of course, Krishna is also manifest in his holy name, he's manifested in the deity form, etc. But as far as we are concerned in the Krishna consciousness movement, this Bhagavad Purana is essential, is an essential item, or hearing from the Bhagavad Purana is an essential item that has to be performed daily. Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya. Actually, if Srila Rupa Goswami lists the 5 most essential items of devotional service, and hearing from Bhagavatam every day is an essential item. In other words, essential means it must be done every day, just like chanting our rounds, hearing from Bhagavatam, worshipping Tulsi, residing in the holy place, and chanting the holy names, etc. So Shukadeva Goswami, or Shuka, the parrot, understood that he had to hear from Bhagavatam now that Krishna and Radharani had left this world. So he went to a Bhagavatam recital that Lord Shiva was giving. You heard the story already? No, you didn't hear the story. It's a very interesting story. So Lord Shiva was giving Bhagavatam class to his wife Parvati. And he was in ecstasy, and he was closing his eyes as he was reciting the Bhagavatam. And but Parvati was doing something that many of us do in Bhagavatam class, which is sleeping. Because we understand that by regular attendance in Bhagavatam class, all the inauspicious things in your heart become diminished almost to nil. And some of those inauspicious things are keeping us from resting peacefully at night. Just like an artist, you know, just like generally at night, you know, we have all these dreams, anxieties, and things like that. Kama, Krodha, Mada, Matsarya, Bharya, Vaya. Vaya means fear or anxiety. So when you get rid of these things, you can sleep peacefully at night. So Parvati was resting peacefully during Bhagavatam class. Of course, in the early days of the movement, most of the devotees rested during Bhagavatam class. There's this interesting story that Prabhupada came to a temple once, and he was giving Bhagavatam class, and he looked around and everyone was sleeping in the whole room. That was also because they had previously stayed up the last few nights preparing for Srila Prabhupada's arrival. And this generally happened. Prabhupada was coming. Everybody stayed up for 3 or 4 nights just painting the temple and doing all sorts of things. Prabhupada looked around the room and he commented, he said, this movement is going on only by Krishna's mercy. You know, because everyone was sleeping. How else will the movement go on? So, and then in the early days of the movement, people weren't given enough rest. You know, I remember there was a stricture, you couldn't rest more than 5 hours a night, and you're not allowed to take a nap during the day. And so generally we were taking our naps when we were driving a car. But, you know, for me it wasn't dangerous because I took a nap at the red light. Not when I was moving, obviously, so I learned the trick of doing that. So, and then in Bhagavatam class, sometimes you hear people crash. You know, they'd be standing in the back just to stay awake, and they'd go boom, boom, and it'd just be some devotee falling to the ground, and some devotees would even fall asleep eating prasadam, which is remarkable. Their faces would actually go right into the food. So, this is too much austerity. Actually, it makes the heart hard, and it makes you sick, too. So, anyway, Parvati was resting during Bhagavatam class, and she basically was, taking resting. So Lord Shiva kept asking Parvati as he was giving Bhagavatam class, do you understand everything? And the parrot was there. So the parrot was emulating or imitating Parvati and saying, yes, yes. You know, however, I can't imitate Parvati, but the parrot was saying, oh, it's wonderful. That's ecstatic. And so Lord Shiva went on and on with Bhagavatam class, and the parrot was in complete ecstasy, and Parvati was sleeping. So then Lord Shiva eventually opened his eyes up, and he saw this parrot there, and he saw Parvati sleeping. And Lord Shiva is known as Ashutosh, which means he's easily pleased, but he's also easily angered. So when he saw this parrot, he just thought, what's this nonsense parrot doing here? Because generally, parrots don't make good devotees. As Prabhupada said, a parrot can chant Hare Krishna in imitation of a human being, but when it comes time at the time of death, or you go put your hands around a parrot to choke it, he just goes squawk. Doesn't chant Hare Krishna. We don't want to be just like parrots. We want to be chanting with realization and with devotion. So Lord Shiva got so angry with this parrot, he started chasing the parrot all over the place. And at the same time, this is a Gaur Govinda Maharaj story, anyway. And at the same time, is from Orissa actually. And so at the same time, there was a Bhagavatam class going on, and that class was being given by Srila Vyasadeva to his wife. And Srila Vyasadev's wife was actually quite alert. Not only was she alert, she had her mouth open during class. She was going, wow, wow. And so the parrot, to make a long story short, the parrot flew into the mouth of Srila Vyasadev's wife. And as a result, Shukadev got implanted within her womb. And it was quite a long pregnancy. Prabhupada describes 16-year pregnancy. And she must have been quite large at that time. So what happened is that eventually there was a recitation of Srimad-Bhagavatam again. Vyasadeva was giving a recitation of Srimad-Bhagavatam. Even Krishna came and tried to convince Shukadev to come out of the womb. But Vyasadeva was speaking Srimad-Bhagavatam, and Shukadev Goswami at that point thought, now I can come out. The reason he hadn't come out was because he was a Brahmavadi, not a Mayavadi. There's a difference. A Brahmavadi is someone who was absorbed in Brahman, but basically he's not going around criticizing God, saying that God is just Maya, or his form is just Maya. Whereas a Mayavadi, he says everything is illusion, God's form is illusion, and you just have to merge into the existence or the energy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But a Brahmavadi, basically, a normal Brahmavadi just doesn't deal with it. He's just absorbed in Brahman. That's all he knows. Something like, I guess, an agnostic as compared to an atheist. An atheist goes around writing so many books. It was like yesterday, Jayananda gave me this atheist book, real thick book. You know, just just to try to convert me. Dave, he said, Maharaj, you've been serving Krishna. No, I'm just joking. So many years now, it's time to understand the truth about things. No, actually, it's very interesting studying the atheist arguments. And this very professional atheist, actually, he actually was just engaged in ad hominem attacks against the theists. Ad hominem attacks means you attack someone personally. You actually try to denigrate. This is like the final argument that people use when they get so frustrated they can't come up with any other arguments. They attack you personally. Say, well, you're just stupid anyway. And they throw away all logic and reasoning with the ad hominem attacks. Anyway, I'm not going to get into who it was. It's a famous atheist. So the point is that Brahmavadi is not an atheist. He just absorbed in Brahman. So Shukadeva Goswami at that point had the pastime of manifesting someone who is just absorbed in Brahman. And someone who's just absorbed in Brahman has to be really careful about falling into Maya. Because, especially when you get born, it's easy to fall into Maya. Like Bhaktivinoda Thakur talks about how the soul sometimes within the mother's womb is praying to Krishna to get out. Because the soul's body is being bitten by worms, and it's, so many things. The mother eats some hot chili peppers, and the child is just squirming around, like having hot chili peppers all over your body. And the soul is praying, if I come out, I'll be your devotee, Krishna. And so Krishna lets the soul come out, but unfortunately, when the soul comes out, there's some forgetfulness because of the stress of birth, and also when the soul comes out of the body, or the body comes out of the body, the soul, embodied soul, comes out of the body, the soul is subjected to so many different things like caresses. Caresses means like kissing, embracing. And Bhaktivinoda Thakur says the soul says, or the embodied entity thinks, this is the life. I mean, being a little kid in a nice home is just like really enjoyable. All you have to do is cry and you get what you want. Pretty good, isn't it? I mean, I could cry at my age and nobody will get me what I want. They'll just tell me I'm in Maya. But if you're a little kid and people are smelling your head, right? You smell the head? And they think, but nobody smelled my head. Isn't it? I mean, just like, huh? Nobody's pinched my cheek recently. Nobody's told me how cute I am recently. It's really frustrating being old, isn't it? So, getting back to the point, so Shukadeva was concerned, if I'm born, then this is going to happen to me, and it's better to be in a miserable circumstance, so I can be absorbed in Brahman. Because if everything is nice and I'm getting all this attention, it's going to be hard to be absorbed in Brahman. There's going to be all this Maya or illusion. And so therefore, Shukadeva Goswami decided to stay in the womb for those many years. But when he heard about the devotional service to the Lord, then he immediately relinquished his Brahman conception, his impersonal Brahman conception, and came out because he had something to do. Of course, this is related to this verse in the Bhagavatam, the Atmaramas verse, Atmaramas cha muriyo nigrante piru krame kurvantiyo haitaki bhakti yatam bhuta gunahari, that proves the superiority of devotional service, the superiority over the Mayavadi conception. Because this verse states that even those who are absorbed in Brahman, of course, Lord Chaitanya actually analyzes this verse in different ways too, but for the purpose of this class, I'll just give the direct meaning. Even those who are absorbed in Brahman are attracted to the transcendental name, quality, and form, pastimes of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So that's proof that Krishna consciousness is transcendental even to Brahman. And not only, of course, Shukadeva Goswami was attracted like that, but also you have the four Kumaras when they went to the Vaikuntha planet and they smelled the tulsi leaves and flowers offered to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. They relinquished their Brahman conception and became absorbed in the service of the Lord. So that's the superior taste or superior attraction of Krishna's pastimes or Krishna's qualities or Krishna's form or anything related to Krishna. Of course, when you would really advance in devotional service, as mentioned here in the purport, then anything that reminds you, and everything reminds you of Krishna, puts you in ecstasy. In Rupa Goswami's language, that's called a vibhava. Vibhava means that which excites or stimulates the emotion, And vibhavas are described in two different categories, alambana and udipana. That means things that are directly Krishna, like if you see Krishna, playing his flute, or if you just see a peacock feather. That excites you. Like with the story of Mukunda, the associate of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, when he was advising the Nawab Hussain Shah, and he saw a peacock feather. The Nawab Hussain Shah was being fanned by a peacock fan. He just fell down from the podium and just like started to froth in the mouth and went into complete ecstasy. And he explained to the Nawab Hussain Shah basically that he had epilepsy. And actually, some of the symptoms of pure devotion to the Bhavas, like the Vyavachari Bhavas, they are very similar to madness, Divyanmata, this transcendental madness. Very, 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 very similar. I mean, a pure devotee has to continually suppress these symptoms. Sometimes they come out, just when he's not completely controlling them, like it happened once or twice or three times with Prabhupada. Prabhupada arrived in Miami, Florida. Actually, it first happened in Caracas, Venezuela. And Prabhupada saw Gaur Nitai there. And Prabhupada began to chant this song, Bahudvijanam Nitai Gaurajan. So these two lords, Gaur Nitai, are so merciful. And when he started to chant that, being in this far-off region of the earth, and actually Prabhupada considered America and South America far-off regions of the earth. And we were shocked when we heard Prabhupada say that. He said, this far place, because we were thinking, this is home, far place is India. So it's all a matter of perspective. So when Prabhupada was thinking like that, wow, Lord Chaitanya has appeared in this place so far from Sridham Mayapur, then Prabhupada went into trance. He became unconscious and the devotees didn't know what to do. Eventually, the devotees started chanting after a few minutes and Prabhupada came back. And they asked Prabhupada, what should we do when this happens? And Prabhupada was apologetic. He said, it does not happen very often. He was apologizing for his symptom of ecstasy. I mean, out of his extreme humility, Prabhupada was apologizing. So the pure devotees keep that down, because basically almost anything they see reminds them of Krishna. Like Prabhupada said, if you see a seat, we should think we're sitting on Krishna. Not Krishna's transcendental body, but Krishna's energy. So it should remind us of Krishna. So that's a pure devotee. Anyway, getting back to the point of the Atmarama verse, that when an impersonalist is not yet a pure devotee, hears about Krishna's pastimes or smells the flowers or comes in contact with the holy name somehow or other, then he's transformed immediately into a personalist. And that's what happened with Shukadeva Goswami. He was transformed into a personalist. Of course, he was always a personalist, being the parrot of Srimati Radharani, but this was a pastime. Like Arjuna was under Yoga Maya, forgetting who Krishna was, and therefore he became bewildered, and the Bhagavad Gita had to be spoken in the same way. Shukadeva Goswami felt like that. So as soon as he heard this, he jumped out of his mother's womb, or came out somehow or other, and he ran away. Because he didn't want to be engaged in ordinary dealings with his parents, because he thought, now it's time to preach Krishna consciousness. I don't want to be engaged in mundane activities. And he ran so fast that his father was running after him. Because, you're waiting for someone for 16 years. Obviously, you're going to be a little disappointed if he runs away when you first meet him, And so his father was running after him and said, oh my son, it's described. Only the trees and the mountains would echo his plaintive cry. In other words, the son didn't say, go back home, Dad. he just like, he was so determined to preach Krishna consciousness, he didn't even say goodbye. It's almost like the Bible where Jesus Christ said to someone, you know, it's time to preach. I'm just paraphrasing. And the man said, well, I got to bury my father first. He died. And then Jesus Christ said, let the dead bury the dead. Isn't it? I mean, it's pretty interesting. So he was so enthusiastic to preach that his basically running away from his father. And his father kept running. So Shukadeva Goswami was thinking, you know, how to get rid of this father. Not to kill him, but you know, how to send him back home. So he used his mystic power, because devotees have all these mystic powers. And he created a clone. You know what a clone is? A duplicate.
Replica.
You know, so you actually have cloning in the Vedic literatures, which is really interesting. There's so many examples of cloning. You have Maharaj Nimi, who died, and he didn't want to come back to life because he was already back to Godhead. He was cursed by his guru to die. There's a whole story, which I'm not going to tell. And then they churned his body, they cloned his body, and they got the first Janaka. And, you know, maybe Janaka the 10th was Sita Devi's father. And then there's so many stories like Vena. Vena was a horrible king. You know, he was torturing all the Brahmins and devotees. He was killed by the Brahmanas, and the Brahmanas needed another king, so they cloned his body, but they took out the bad genes first. And that became Bahuka, you know, all the bad genes. And then the good genes became Prithu and Archie. Actually an incarnation of God. So they're actually even able to clone and get an incarnation of God. That's pretty good, isn't it? We should see if the scientists can do that. If they can do the cloning, by their cloning experiments, they can come up with an incarnation of God. I don't think so. So anyway, so Shukadeva Goswami ran away and created a clone Shuka, and that Shuka went home with his father, got married, had children, and there's a whole dynasty described in the Bhagavatam about it, which is interesting. Sometimes people get confused. They read the Bhagavatam and they hear, Shukadeva Goswami's grandchild? I thought he was a brahmachari. But it's actually the clone, that imitation, the clone Shuka who went back to the father to pacify the father. So Shukadeva Goswami ran away. He didn't even have to take the time to put clothes on. I mean, he was just like a 16-year-old boy, you know, fully developed, running. And also it's described in the Bhagavatam that his father was running after him. But because Shukadeva Goswami was actually, you know, completely pure. Of course, the father was also pure, but these are just pastimes. Because Shukadeva Goswami was completely pure, even though he passed by girls that were bathing in the river, they didn't even bother to cover themselves because they saw that he was just a pure personality from the spiritual world. And he was a fully developed 16-year-old boy. Whereas when the father ran by these girls, they just like immediately started covering themselves. Because by external appearances, Vyasadeva had taken the ashram, Grahastha ashram, where you have to distinguish between men and women. In the Paramahansa ashram, which Shukadeva Goswami is a Paramahansa, you actually consider everyone to be a devotee, and you don't really see the body at all, which is interesting. I mean, that's really the way to overcome racism and all sorts of distinctions in society. You don't even see the body. You just see the soul. I mean, of course, obviously, it's not that you're walking into walls or anything like that. You know, people may think the Paramahamsa. No, that person may be just spaced out if they're walking into walls. Sometimes we confuse devotees who are avadutas, you know, avadutas like the wind, devotees who are spaced out, think, oh, they're Paramahamsas. No, they're just spaced out. They took too many drugs before they joined the Hare Krishna movement. That's basically it, or suffering post-traumatic stress, PTSD. So, yeah, so one on that Paramahamsa platform doesn't really make that distinction. You know, he looks at someone and doesn't, you know, he's aware of the body, but it doesn't really that important to the person. It's a spirit soul, and the spirit soul has to be saved. I mean, it's interesting in Krishna consciousness, somehow or other, we make, in our movement, we're making too much of a distinction according to the body. Like right now on the GBC, there's this discussion about whether women can become gurus or not. And of course, Lord Chaitanya speaks very clearly. He says, Kiva Vipra Kiva Nashi Shuja Kenana Ye Krishna Tattva Veta Se Guru Hoy. That if one knows the science of Krishna, whether he's learned or Shudra birth, it doesn't matter, he can become a guru. It doesn't matter. The whole point is knowing the science of Krishna. And then sometimes we get people, some of our devotees from India come and they make this claim that only people born in Brahmin families can become gurus. I mean, it's not only in our movement, actually there's some of the Goswami, you may be familiar with this, some of the Goswami families, there's one, anyway, I'm not going to mention his name, starts with a C. He's come to America and South America and makes this claim that, oh, you have to be born in a Brahmin family. But even though there's so much evidence in our Sampradaya, Narottama Das Thakur was considered a Shudra, he was what greatest guru, and so many people who were born in Vaishya and other types of families became gurus. And in Kali Yuga, the statement is Kalo Shudra Sambhava, everyone's Shudra. Samskara Bhavet Dvijam. By proper samskara, people can be transformed into Brahmins. And there's also that story in the where's in the Upanishads? Yeah. What is the Sanskrit name of the truth lover? You should remember that. I forget. Anyway, there's this Shudra, okay, who approaches a guru. His Shudra didn't even know who. I forget the name. What is the you must remember the Sanskrit name. Satyakam. That's it. Thank you very much. There's a Vedic scholar there. So Satyakam approaches, he wasn't Satyakam in the beginning, but he was from Shudra family, didn't know who his father was. So he approaches the guru, and he says to the guru, can you accept me as a disciple? And the guru says, well, who's your father? What's your gotra? And he goes back to his mother and says to his mother, who's my father? And the mother says, I don't know. Could have been him, or him. And it's kind of bewildering. It's like Kali Yuga. Actually, in one country that I preach in, Fiji, there are people who are not allowed to ask who someone's father is. Because there's so much, amongst the natives there, because in the birth certificate it only has one name. Not the Indian population, the native population. You're not allowed to ask. It's actually considered an insult. So getting to the point of Satyakama. So Satyakama, or he wasn't Satyakama then, because later on he got the name from his guru, Satyakama. So Satyakama goes to his guru and says, my mother doesn't know. It could have been him, or him. And then the guru says, you're a real Brahmin, because you're telling the truth. So that's really the point. Someone should be judged based on qualities. And that's from the Upanishads, that story. That's not, sometimes people say, well, we don't accept the Itihasas or Puranas, Bhagavatam, we just accept the Vedas and the Upanishads. Well, the Upanishads are very clear in this respect. If you look at the Upanishads and of course the original Vedas. So anyway, so this whole discussion whether ladies can become gurus or whatever, actually anyone who knows the science of Krishna can become guru. Of course, knowing the science of Krishna means jnana and vijnana sahitam. To actually practice and be realized. If you just know theoretically, that's not knowing the science of Krishna. Then you just teach in the university. So, as they say, those who can do, those who can't teach. Did you ever hear that statement before? That we use, because just like if you're going to school and you're studying business in the business school, and you're wondering why your teacher is teaching business and not doing business if they're so expert. Because if they actually knew business, they wouldn't be teaching, because you make a lot less money teaching than you do doing business, right? So that's where the statement comes. Those who can do, those who can't teach. That's not a criticism of teachers, forgive me. Philosophy department is a different thing. Philosophy and religion is a different thing. I mean, teachers are teachers. But in business, it's like that. So, anyway, getting back to the point. So transcendental, if one is actually in the transcendental platform, it doesn't matter, Kiva Vipra, Kiva Nyasi, Shudra, Kenanai. And Prabhupada made that point very clear, that he wanted all of his followers, both men and women, to become gurus eventually. Because we need an army of gurus in order to preach Krishna consciousness, in order to, if you just have a few old sannyasis, or like me, traveling around the world, it's not really going to work. A bunch of old men that are simply getting older. That's life. You get older. And you have to, because Prabhupada's mission was to actually change the face of the world. Tadvaga visarga janataga vipalo yasmin pratislokam avadavachapi namananantasha yashoni kataniya shrinbandi gayanti hridati sadava. That to create a revolution in the misdirected lives of an impious civilization. So we need an army of gurus, and we need people who are qualified to adjust the presentation of Krishna consciousness. That's also guru. According to time, place, and circumstance, not just presented in a stereotyped way. Just like we were talking recently about this Krishna West. So you might have heard about that. Controversial topic in ISKCON, which I'll get kicked out for talking about. But anyway, so that's what guru means. And so, anyway, but the gurus have to be realized. They may not be paramahanses, but at least they can be on the second-class platform of devotional service. Second class means able to distinguish between who's envious, who's favorable, who's a devotee, and to know the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and to be realized in spiritual knowledge. Of course, realization is very important. This is also mentioned here in this purport, that Prabhupada says, right here, by gradual development of transcendental knowledge, one can rise to the stage of transcendental arts and music and dance, displayed by the Lord in his Rasa Leela. So in other words, we have to have that realization. Of course, the progressive path mentioned by Srila Rupa Goswami and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Ado Shradatata, Sadhu Sangota, Bhajana Kriyatar, Narta Nivritti Shat, then Nishta, then Ruchi. So at least we have to be on the platform of Nishta, steadiness in devotional service. And after Nishta, you get this Ruchi. Ruchi means you have a taste for hearing and chanting. Two types of ruchi. One is that you have a taste for hearing and chanting when the presentation is expert, and the other type is you have a taste even when it's not expert. That's pretty high, isn't it? Mm-hmm. That even when someone can't keep a tune, play the mridanga properly, and is screaming Hare Krishna, still you get an ecstasy. That's the highest type of ruchi. And then after ruchi comes the Shakti, then Bhava, transcendental emotions, and then finally Prema. So this is the progressive path. Anyway, so getting back to Shukadeva Goswami, so Shukadeva Goswami was a complete transcendentalist. The girls weren't disturbed, and then he went to preach Krishna consciousness. And another point is, because he was, it wasn't apparent to people, this is another point Prabhupada makes, that because he hadn't yet spoken Krishna consciousness, many people didn't understand his transcendental position. And it's described that some people were actually running behind him, like yelling or making fun of him. This happens sometimes with the transcendentalists. But then, when he arrived at the place where Maharaj Parikshit was sitting down to fast till death, and all the sages rose up and offered him obeisances, then the people understood who he was, and then when he began to speak, it was clearly apparent. So a transcendentalist is known by his speaking. You can't really tell if someone's transcendental just by looking at them. You have to hear the transcendental sound vibration, and also not only the speaking, but the speaking has to have the ability, Bhavanti Ritkarna Rasayana Kata Chajoshana Dasyo Pavarga Vartmani Shraddha Ratir Bhakti Nukramishriti. It has to have the ability to be transcendental, coming down from the transcendental world, and to enter into your heart from your ear, and to give you spiritual enlivenment and help you progress on the path according to Lord Kapila Dev, to develop faith, taste, and finally devotion. In other words, the hearing has to be the bhakti lata bij that's coming from the spiritual world, being transferred by the guru or by the pure devotee who you're hearing from. Okay, so these are some of the points here. We just spoke about Shukadeva Goswami. We didn't really speak about Srila Vyasadeva that much, but I think that's time to ask for questions. Any questions or comments? Yes?
I'm thinking Srila Prabhupada was often referring to little Saraswati as a guru when she was preaching. So what is guru? Is it a question to be initiating guru or just giving the message?
Well, in our sampradaya, according to Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur, the most important link in disciplic succession is the Siksha link. Of course, Diksha is essential too. But we have examples in our disciplic succession that Siksha was considered more important. Like in Bhakti Vinod Thakur, he took Diksha from Vipini Vihari Goswami, and he took Siksha from Jagannath Das Babaji Maharaj. So his connection with Jagannath Das Babaji Maharaj is considered more important than Vipini Vihari Goswami. There's some indication, it's a little controversial, that there was some difference of opinion ultimately that Bhakti Vinod Thakur and Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur had with Vipini Vihari Goswami, and Prana's more expert about these subject matters than me. But basically, yes, it's the Shiksha that's more important. And in our movement, what does that mean in our movement practically for us? That our connection with Srila Prabhupada is the most important connection. And of course, we still like our initiating guru. It's not that we say, you are less important, Guru Dev. Hit the dirt, and what,
but
get out of my life, So we don't say that. But we connect, we understand our Siksha connections with Prabhupada. And that keeps us all together. We have to avoid in our movement the grouping mentality, just like of different groups.
Yes.
This is my guru, this is my guru. That's what tore apart the Gaudiya Math. It's described that at a certain juncture in the Gaudiya Math, it was so much sectarian between the different groups of gurus' disciples. There were even some fights in the temples. You've heard about that, right? That was even chanting, "No, my guru's pranam mantras. No, my guru's pranam mantras. My guru's first. My guru first." And then they actually had a physical fight in front of the deities. I mean, if you're going to fight someone, at least go out of the temple room. Don't do it in the temple room. But they actually did it in the temple room. And there were court battles and everything like that. So the unifying factor in ISKCON is our connection with His Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada and Srila Prabhupada Shiksha.
Yes.
Srila Prabhupada Shiksha. I mean, we don't want to be groupies with Prabhupada either. We want to really understand Prabhupada's desires and Prabhupada's teachings, and be able to also present Prabhupada according to time, place, and circumstance, not just be ritualistically or blindly following Prabhupada. And then that involves a particular subject matter called hermeneutics, which we don't want to get into in Bhagavatam class because it's confusing. So, to understand Prabhupada's, like Rupa Goswami, Sri Chaitanya Mano Bhishtam Shtapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Gadamayam Dadati Swapatantikam. Rupa Goswami is the Acharya because he understood the mind, Mano Bhishtam, the desires of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Not that he simply wrote, word by word, but he was able to elaborate. Rupa and Sanatana Goswami were able to elaborate quite extensively on what Chaitanya Mahaprabhu taught. They wrote more things than what Chaitanya Mahaprabhu taught because they elaborated, they expanded on these things. And you see, this is what the Acharyas do. They take in their purport, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur is expanding on the verse. He's accepting the literal meaning and then expanding on it. So Rupa Goswami did this. And I mean, like some of his stories, like the Lalita Madhava, Vidagdha Madhava, that present the essence of the Krishna conscious, philosophy, or the bhavas, or the pastimes of the Lord, the relationships in the spiritual world. It's not that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu told him those stories. he actually realized them, and he expanded on Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's philosophy in the same way Sanatana Goswami, Brihad Bhagavatamrita, same thing. So, anyway, yes, Prabhupada.
Regarding this Diksha, Shiksha, we often hear, that when you take Diksha, it's like you're plugging yourself into the outlet, and that's your connection to Krishna. And without that Diksha, you won't have that connection to Krishna. Now, I wonder where that comes from, and whether, is it actually true? Because you're saying the Shiksha is more important. I don't know if you could.
Well, I don't find any scriptural injunction that says without Diksha you're not connected with Krishna. But Diksha is essential because that's mentioned as one of the essential items of devotional service. You're connected with Krishna when you hear the holy name. I mean, the holy name, the chanting of Hare Krishna doesn't wait for initiation, according to Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami and Chaitanya Charitamrita. It just doesn't wait. I mean, you're connected with Krishna. I mean, like the first time I heard Prabhupada chanting was on the radio, 1969 or something like that. And I was connected to Krishna at that particular point. And so I wasn't initiated. I wasn't initiated until early in 1972. But I was connected to Krishna. And, Diksha is essential. It's essential to accept a spiritual master because there has to be some training in devotional service. I mean, just on a practical, down-to-earth basis, surrender, that's a heavy word. We don't like to use that anymore. Anyway, what's a better synonym, Love. Anyway, so I'm trying to think of some synonym that's not so threatening to people in the modern world as surrender. But, all right, I can't think of a synonym. But anyway, surrender to Krishna. I mean, what can I say? What?
Taking shelter.
Taking shelter, but that's not really surrender. I could take shelter of someone because I want something from them, Please, I'm taking shelter of you, Prana, because I want some prasadam today. Like I used to go to Prana's place and he used to make pizza for me, so I took shelter of him in that way. And I took shelter in his house, right? I was his guest overnight until I ate too much pizza and he wouldn't let me come anymore. Which I don't eat pizza anymore, don't worry about it. So, I would say, surrender. So in order to surrender, you need to have at least 6 or someone telling you what you need to do. So without understanding, of course, Prabhupada did say the spiritual master's duty is to ascertain the psychophysical nature of the disciple and engage them accordingly. So without that basic training in Krishna consciousness, I mean, it's hard to really surrender to Krishna. Just like in the army, when you join the army, there's basic training, right? They're shooting bullets over your head and everything, and you have to go through the barbed wire and climb all these things. Has anyone here ever joined the army? Isn't it? I mean, it's pretty tough. And so, you develop like a team spirit, unit spirit, it's called, in the army or the navy or something like that. So you need that basic training in Krishna consciousness. And we need authority. I mean, for example, okay, let's take my own life, for example. There's many challenges that we go in, that we have being a member of the GBC or being part of ISKCON, it's just, and so what keeps me going, it's not the prasadam, because prasadam is kind of nice too, but what keeps me going is that Prabhupada would want me doing this. There's that connection, the personal connection with Prabhupada. So accepting a guru is essential in that respect. I mean, we were all meant to develop that personal connection with Prabhupada. I mean, just like we have some Prabhupada disciples who left the movement because things got tough. What is that saying? When the going gets tough, the tough get going. You ever hear that before? So, so those who were tough, they remain. I mean, there's so many challenges that we've had in Krishna consciousness. I remember, I mean, all right, let's give a practical thing. It just happened, not with me, but with one of my godbrothers. He really wants to, I won't mention his name, but some of you know who I'm talking about. He really wants to preach Krishna consciousness tremendously, adapt Krishna consciousness to the Western world. And the GBC, many of the GBC members just piled on him, and he got restricted to only be in my zone. He said, you can only be in Bir Krishna Maharaj's zone. And, you know, that's not so bad. Half the world is my zone. And, you know, it's everywhere from Fiji to Southern Europe to Southeast United States. You know, it's pretty big. So you can only be in his zone. And so, you know, if someone wasn't so dedicated to Prabhupada, they'd just say, well, you know, I'm out of here, basically. I'm going to make my own movement. And many people have done that. But this person, you know, to his credit, great credit, he said, well, you know, I'm not happy with what happened, but, you know, I have to remain serving Srila Prabhupada's mission. So this is a test, you know. And I think many of us will be subjected to tests like that, or maybe more extreme. You know, life gets pretty heavy. Life is not a tragedy, though. You know, I was thinking about this, like Greek tragedies or Shakespearean tragedies. They're real tragedies because at the end, you're all finished, you know. Isn't it? Dead. But in Krishna consciousness, you know, there's always another chance, first of all. And second of all, you go back to Godhead when it's all over. You know, you do. It's not like life's a poor player that struts and frets his time upon the stage and then is heard no more. That's Shakespeare, actually. But, you know, life, you know, the soul is a player that struts and frets his time upon the stage and then he's heard again. That's a paraphrasing, putting my own words to Shakespeare. So it's not a tragedy. So the connection, the personal connection with persons, and you know, it can be Prabhupada, but in many cases it may be our Diksha Guru too. It's extremely important to keep us stable and steady in devotional service. I mean, I just, you know, Prabhupada's the reason I wake up early every morning. I go to Mangal Arati, I chant my rounds. It's, you know, it's just Prabhupada. I'm just thinking, what would please Prabhupada? I try to judge my activities based, or make my decisions based upon what would please Prabhupada. And that personal connection is very important. Anyway, so we are connected to Krishna even before initiation, to answer your question. It doesn't wait for initiation. Yeah. Srini?
Maharaj, did Prabhupada decided to have journal system?
Who system?
Did Prabhupada decided to have a journal system like what we have nowadays? That the gurus have this area, this we don't...
No, zonal system, no. No, the Prabhupada didn't want a zonal system.
Why the ISKCON has done this?
Well, that was a misunderstanding of Prabhupada's. It's not anymore. I mean, the gurus go all over the place. And in the future, the gurus won't be such like big characters. You know, they just be down home, homey, you know, regular, you know, sweet, wonderful, whatever. Regular people, you know, who advise you in Krishna consciousness. It won't be just like these people who fly in like on Garuda and then just like hang glide from the airplane. You know, hang gliding, you know what that is? Or, you know, they're just being like people who help you in Krishna consciousness. It'll be like, usually local people, but it won't be such a big to-do, which is not really, long term, we don't want this like big to-do gurus like me. And just like, I'm a relic, you know, just like, you know, relic? Anachronism? Museum, you know, like you have like a skeleton of a dinosaur, you know, same thing. Dinosaur, Tyrannosaurus Rex, or what? Or pterodactyl, you know what a pterodactyl is? So it's one of these big birds that doesn't exist anymore. So it's just, you know, this is a relic. You know, in the future, it's going to be like local people advising. And anyway, there's a lot of strategic planning that has to be done in between now and then. There'll be, this is my prediction, in the future there'll be a difference between the manager of the temple and the priest of the temple. Right now we've conflated these two activities and it creates some problems, conflicts of interest, as we say in ISKCON. So there'll be, you know, anyway, so Prabhupada didn't want zonal things. To answer your question, no. This was a mistake when Prabhupada left the planet, people thought to become gurus, you have to imitate Prabhupada. And, you know, Anusar, Anukar, imitation is not required. Following the footsteps or serving the footsteps is what's required. So it was a mistake. And it was so bad that in order to go from one zone to another, you had to get a visa. I remember I was in America, and I'm a U.S. citizen. So one time I went to Texas without informing the local guru. It was Tamal Krishna Maharaj. He's my friend now, you know. And so I just went there to visit a friend. I didn't go there to create problems or preach or do anything. Just visited one of my friends. I was taking a course, actually, a week-long course in something, and I was staying at a friend's house. And I get this call from the zonal acharya, and he says, "What are you doing in my zone?" And I said, "I'm an American. I'm allowed to go anywhere in America without a visa." He said, "You should have gotten permission first." I said, "Hare Krishna." Because I'm not one to be pushed around too much. So I said, "Excuse me, Maharaj."
Such things you feel it even in Vrindavan now.
Yeah, well, it shouldn't be. Actually, we're all Prabhupada's, you know, grandchildren or children like that, and it's just one movement. And this whole guru group thing, you know, there's my guru, your guru. I mean, yeah, in our hearts, you know, we can have certain relationships like that, but this would tear apart our movement if we have this in our society. We just don't want it. We want to feel like sometimes my disciples. That's interesting. Mistake to say my disciples anyway. The ones that belong to me, my possession. Anyway, so sometimes the people who got initiated by me, that's a better way to say it, they say, "Gurudev, can we have a disciple meeting?" And I say, "No, because this creates division." I said, if people want to come and hear me speak, everybody can come. I'm not going to say just disciples can come. It's because we don't want that division. We want people to all work together in one happy family, kumbaya, you know, joining hands.
Then just why don't we follow how Prabhupada have done?
Yeah, that's what we're followers of Prabhupada. And the guru is to help us connect to Prabhupada. We actually have gurus, not Ritvik, to help us connect to Prabhupada. And, you know, Prabhupada's the one that came from the spiritual world. And, you know, I personally didn't come from the spiritual world. I came from somewhere else where I can't even mention. But I didn't come from the spiritual world. And I'm trying my best to serve Prabhupada. And but, you know, Prabhupada's a unique personality. It's like the priest imitating Jesus Christ. And if you go to the church and then all of a sudden the priest is on a cross. And the priest says, "I am the way, the truth, and the light. No one comes to the Father but through me. And I'm dying for your sins, my dear parishioners." Huh? I'm going to think he'd be locked away in an institution if he says that. But there's Jesus Christ and the priest. The priests also initiate people, you know. Isn't it? They do baptism. And they can give people names. I mean, it's fine with that. And you may have a very deep connection with your priest. He may be your eternal priest also. But there's Jesus Christ is there at the forefront of the church. I mean, that's the important thing. We don't want any personality cults in the Krishna consciousness movement. It's just anyway. If you examine religious societies now we're going to talk from a sociological perspective. There's something called the charismatic phase. When the religious movements start, or even businesses start, you have a charismatic stage. I mean, let's take Apple Computer, for example. Apple Computer started with a charismatic stage. Who is the founder Acharya? Does anyone know?
Steve Jobs.
Steve Jobs, you know, blessed founder Acharya. All glories to his divine grace. And so, but now, I mean, do you know who was the CEO or in charge of Apple? Not really. I mean, he's probably a nice guy. Steve Jobs actually took prasadam at our temple. Steve Jobs and also, the heads of all these big corporations.
When they were poor, yeah?
When they were poor, yeah. And they became purified. That's why they became rich. So if you come to our temple and you give something to the deities, you will become rich. I guaranteed. So that's an impetus to come to the temple. It's like Tirupati. So, so you had your Foundracharya, and then later on you have a different system of organization of Apple Computer or Microsoft or something like that. It's a different system. You always have a little CEO, but he's not in the same level as Steve Jobs or Bill Gates or people like that. It's in the same way in let's say the Ramanuja Sampradaya, the Sri Sampradaya. You have Ramanujacharya, and then you have people who are representative nowadays. There's not people saying, I'm the new Ramanujacharya. Nobody comes to the Father but through me. I mean, this is... Anyway, so what happened in ISKCON is people misunderstood. It's understandable we misunderstood because everyone was 22 years old. You had people as good as God who were 22 years old. Mm. I mean, in most countries, you can't become the prime minister or president until you're 35 or 40. I know in America it's like that. I mean, you wouldn't let a 21-year-old whippersnapper become a president, right? I mean, that'd be crazy. Unless he's, transcendental personality. So, you had these people sitting on the Vyasa, and it got so crazy that when we had GBC meetings, everyone had to have, all 11, had to have their own Vyasa-san and Guru Puja simultaneously. So I remember in one temple in Miami, Florida, I was a temple president, where we had 11 gurus, 11 Vyasa-sans, 11 pujaris, 11 arti plates, and there was no room for the devotees to be in the temple room during the Guru Puja. We had to stand out in the hallway, not me because I was a sannyasi, and it was weird. The whole thing was just like completely weird, and it got, with me, I got so sarcastic about the whole thing that when I was saying the Guru's pranati, because they, even though I was a godbrother, had to do that, I said it in a joking way, and the Guru's, there was one Guru, I mean, I used to say it like a hog call. Hog call, I don't know if you know what that is, when you're calling pigs in the field. And then he got so angry in the middle of it, he threw water from the Vyasa sign on me.
Who was this?
I won't mention. So, but he's my friend. I mean, he's a good friend, very close to me now. But in those days, people, what do they say? Absolute power can really change someone's mind.
But this affected many devotees in a very negative way.
Yeah, but I understand it was the wrong thing to do, but it's also understandable given that everybody was just a kid.
Yes.
It was the wrong thing to do. It affected many people. That's called, so what's that? So going back to the sociology of religion, there's the charismatic phase, that's Prabhupada, starts it. And then the next phase is you get people trying to in any religious society it's like that. They try to imitate the founder. And then after a while it settles down to the post-charismatic phase, and things get...
Where are we now?
Normal. We're becoming in the post-charismatic phase right now because, the charisma is being invested in Prabhupada's mission. Mm. That's really what you want to do. Not, sometimes they say in the institution, but I'd rather say in the mission of Prabhupada, rather than the institution, because there's a difference between mission and institution. So, but that's at the stage where now things are settling down, the gurus are becoming normal. In 50 years, the gurus will be even more normal. They won't be like me, like completely eccentric, abnormal, with a bunch of blind followers who'll do anything. What did Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati say? He was asked, how many disciples do you have? And you know what he replied? I have 4. He said, I have 2 arms and 2 legs. That was his reply to how many disciples he had. And you see, even with Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, how many people actually followed him? One of his primary instructions was to form a GBC and manage his society cooperatively. But there was fighting in the courts almost immediately. There was fighting even before he left this world, in the Calcutta Gaudiya Math. And then, but Prabhupada was the one who actually understood. You know, all his disciples who understood. You know, Srila Prabhupada understood them. Srila Prabhupada carried out his mission, and Srila Prabhupada instituted the GBC, which ultimately saved ISKCON. I mean, we even had a revolution, a coup, in the GBC many years ago, because of this whole guru situation. We had, I was attending meetings every week or every 2 weeks. We'd have meetings in a place called Tuaco, New Jersey, which is near New York, about how to overthrow the GBC. You know, coup meetings. And so we had this, and we had a coup. You know, we actually reconstituted the GBC because of this.
Which year?
Was it 85? You would know your history of ISKCON better than me.
Yeah, that one.
85, 86.
Because
And it's interesting, many of the GBC members, just an interesting point, saw the coup coming and they decided to join the coup because they thought, you know, if we don't join the coup, we're out of here. So they became revolutionaries at the same time.
Because 86 Acharya officially was...
Yeah, finished. Yeah, 85, 86. We had a meeting in New Vrindavan, which I went to. And that's when I became, you know, was approved as an initiating guru in 1985 at the New Vrindavan meeting. Because I was thinking, if you can't beat them, join them.
Classic.